afternoon, everyone. This is Colleen Carlson with the University of Minnesota Extension. I'm a local county extension educator in Carver and Scott County. I grew up on a diversified crop and livestock farm, and I'm a fifth generation chicken raiser. My great-grandparents and great-grandmother raised eggs, and my grandmother shared with me the importance of the egg money that she grew up during the Depression and how important eggs are. While I was in high school, I was on the FFA poultry judging team. So some of that expertise, I shouldn't say knowledge, it's not expertise, knowledge is going to come in handy today when we talk about egg handling and grading. This is a basic information today, and we are going to be recorded. With me today, I have Wayne Martin with the University of Minnesota Extension based in St. Paul. He will be monitoring our chat box, and Abby Noy, extension educator who works in biosecurity and is a poultry specialist. So welcome to my colleagues today from the University of Minnesota, and also welcome to all of you on this snowy day, a great day to talk about the wonderful world of eggs. So we're going to talk about eggs for the backyard and small flock chicken keepers. Some of the rules for commercial egg production are different than they are for backyard and small flock keepers. On Thursday, we'll be having another webinar with the Minnesota Department of Agriculture about the rules and regulations for selling eggs. And we invite you to join us on Thursday at noon as well for those sessions. We're going to talk about the timelines for laying, molting, and enjoying eggs at home, and all egg-related things that are nice to know. And I encourage you to ask your questions in the chat box, and we will be answering them at the end of the presentation. But we've allowed a lot of times for questions and answers today. So what are backyard chickens? And we talk about this definition. All chickens are raised with access to outdoors are backyard chickens, regardless of whether they're in an urban background or in greater Minnesota or across the country. The number of chickens in the flock doesn't matter, because I know that we'll have some backyard producers with us today who are limited by city ordinances and regulations to be between 3 and 6 chickens. And then our small flock producers, which can be up to several hundred. So I want to welcome you to the importance of the Minnesota chicken industry. You are a part of it. But from a commercial perspective, Minnesota consistently ranks in the top 10 in egg production. We're currently number 8. The value that Minnesota egg production brings is 170 million. And the eggs are delivered to processing plants and processed as whole eggs, liquid eggs, and powdered eggs, as well as what we do in our backyards. Minnesota's egg industry employs over 2,900 companies like Sparbo, by Michael Foods, Rembrandt Foods, Land O'Lakes, and you can see those. And then Minnesota's poultry industry, that's the broiler, egg, and turkey industry, is valued at about $1 billion of the total impact across the state of Minnesota. So it's important when we talk about small flocks that we keep in mind our biosecurity and how we handle our eggs for safety and for our own use, because it will impact employment and our economic industry here in Minnesota. So let's get started. We've had some questions in our past webinars. What's the timeline for egg production? So you get your small birds, you raise them up. Their first egg is going to happen between 18 to 22 weeks of age, depending on what breed you have, what kind of facilities you have, how well you've cared for them. And it's important to know that an average hen can lay about 286 eggs per year. And some of your heavier standard breeds aren't going to lay as many. The commercial chicken that is used a lot is the white leghorn, because of its feed efficiency and its higher egg production. So the other thing too, it's important to know that it takes about 25 hours from ovulation to when the hen actually lays an egg. So sometimes we say an egg a day, but we got to account for that kind of that extra hour there. And then the hen starts producing her next egg 30 minutes after it lays its egg. At about 18 months, you're going to have, well, and the other thing too, well, I'll get to that. At about 18 months of age, your chicken is going to have its first molt. And this is when the chicken stops laying eggs. It typically occurs in the fall when we have a change in daylight. They'll take a break from laying. They'll shed feathers for a week. Then they'll regrow and then they'll start laying. So one of the recommendations we have is that during this molting phase is that you increase their feed to 20% protein. Their first year of production, they will lay about 286 eggs. After each year after that, it will start to decline. Some hens will lay 5 to 7 years. Typically, usually on the small flock backyard, it's 3 to 4 years. But there again, too, it depends on their environment, how well they're cared for, and also their breed. As hens age, they will lay larger eggs. And this can become a storage issue because they're not going to fit in that large egg carton anymore, or even an extra large egg carton. And I have a first year leghorn that is laying double yolkers every day. I don't know why, but it is. And they're hard to fit into the carton. So why is that an issue? Well, if it doesn't fit into the carton, the chances of it getting cracked and knocked and broken in the egg carton are pretty high. And that affects the quality. Well, and it affects the quality of the egg and also can pass germs and bacteria and contamination. So keep that in mind as the hen gets older and they lay larger eggs, that you're going to have to do something different to accommodate where you're storing those eggs. In the commercial, and for this reason, because the eggs get bigger as the chickens age, that's why commercial operations typically keep chickens up to 2 years. And then they move them down the production pipeline. An important consideration for all backyard keepers and small flock keepers is when chickens reach their end of life. Are you going to put them into retirement? Chickens can live up to 10 to 12 years, depending on how well they're cared for and their environment. And the next consideration is how you harvest or process them. For people who live in urban areas, this, I know that you can process chickens, and also if they reach their end of life, they can be taken care of. But this is an important family conversation and a consideration about when a chicken has ended its useful life, what is the plans, especially when children are involved and they become pets. It's really difficult. And I've had conversations with people about what's their next option. And it can be harvesting, but also it can be burial. One of the questions I get a lot is what if my chicken is not laying eggs? What can we do? Well, first of all, we need to look at the best management practices for egg production. Are they getting a complete feed? It's about 16% for layers. Are they getting a supplement of grit, which aids in digestion, and oyster shells for added calcium? Is there plenty of water? And then many people started raising their chickens early this spring, and they're just coming into their laying season. But we've also, since September 20th, we've experienced shortened day length. And are we providing that alternative light up to 16 hours per day with a 25-watt light bulb or a 3 to 9 LED bulb is what is recommended. Is there proper spacing in the coop, on the nests and in the roosts? And I'll address that a little bit later. And is the coop clean? And then also to monitor ventilation and keep that keep the temperature at between 50 and 65 degrees. Because if chickens are too hot, they won't lay. If they're being bullied because there's no space, they may not lay eggs. One of the things that I do, especially with a whole new batch of layers, is put in what I call a Gomer egg. So it could be a fancy glass egg that you purchase, or it could just be a golf ball in the nest box to show the chickens where to lay. But also consider, are they getting adequate water? Is there plenty of feed? What are some other reasons that this chicken may not be laying or start to lay at that 18 to 22 weeks? So what we're going to talk about today partly is that egg production and how to handle our eggs, but also how to keep eggs clean. And really, this does start in the chicken coop. It starts in the nesting boxes. You want to use clean nest boxes. You want to have a space of 1 nest box per 5 hens. Some folks use nesting curtains to keep the nest box darkened because they don't like to lay in that light. They want to go in there and they want to be cozy. And then you also want to provide plenty of roosting space so that they don't roost near the nesting boxes or poop in the nesting boxes, which my nesting box has a rail on it, and then they'll roost there, but they'll put their butt end towards the box and put droppings in there. And if they have plenty of roosting spaces, that can be avoided. And we recommend 9 inches per bird of roosting space. And that also becomes really important here in our Minnesota winters to keep the birds warm. You can put clean shaving, straw, or nesting pads in your nest box. The main thing is that it stays clean and you check it each day. If a chicken is laying eggs and one cracks or breaks, you want to make sure that you clean that nest out completely. If you happen to have a chicken who is pecking the eggs and breaking the eggs, one unscientific research, or not one unscientific practice, is to take an eggshell, fill it with mustard, and put it in the nest box. And then that hen that is pecking that egg or eating that egg will get a taste of that mustard and they'll quit pecking on the eggs. But also, if they're doing that, recheck, make sure that there's plenty of oyster shell, grit, and that chicken is not getting bullied or that they're bored. You may want to add some scratch greens in there to keep them active and occupied so that they don't eat the eggs. An important part of keeping eggs clean is egg collection. Eggs are generally laid within 5 hours of the first light in the morning. So typically by noon, you want to collect your eggs 2 to 3 times per day, more in warmer or colder weather, because you don't want them to crack or freeze, but then also you don't want them to get too hot. For people who work, this isn't really an option. So I would suggest one of the first things that you do with your chores is to go collect your eggs. Eggs can freeze in the nest box, so be watchful of hairline cracks in a frozen egg. If this happens, it is generally recommended that you discard that egg because bacteria can enter into that cracked egg. Frozen but not cracked eggs can be consumed, and what they suggest with that is to hard boil them. And then eggs should be held at 60 degrees to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 70% relative humidity before cleaning. Eggs stored at room temperature about 75 degrees can drop as much as 1 grade per day. So it's really important to collect and package your eggs the same day. Cleaning versus washing eggs. Even universities across the country have different opinions on whether eggs should be washed with water. And we will find out regulations on Thursday during the Minnesota Department of Ag presentation about proper cleaning for eggs if you are going to put them for sale. So what is recommended is that if you have some splotches of dirt or soiled eggs, is that you take some fine grit sandpaper. And usually what I do is I cut them in strips like this, and then I just cut off a little 1-inch square like this if I have a little bit of adhering dirt, and I scratch it off with this sandpaper. I do this because when I get done with this piece of sandpaper, I want to throw it in the garbage because I don't want to contaminate other eggs or use it the next day when bacteria has had more chance to grow on the egg. So just a small square of sandpaper. And there are fancy scratch pads and scrubbies and things like that. But remember, this is dirt, it's manure, and for your own health and safety and biosecurity, I do not recommend using a sponge or those grit pads. Just use a little bit of sandpaper. And sometimes people just use a little bit of wet paper toweling to get some of the dirt off the eggs. Eggs with stains should be discarded because eggs have pore spaces that allow bacteria into the egg. So just imagine like your skin. That's what that shell does. That there are just as toxins can enter your skin germally, so can they with eggs. So if you choose to wash the eggs, don't let them sit in water. Use running water that is not more than 20 degrees warmer than the eggs. Because of the temperature differentiation, you might have transpiration and evaporation between the water and what is in the shell. And then also, as I mentioned before, just a damp paper toweling. It is important to know too that commercial egg producers do use egg washing systems, and there are USDA guidelines for doing so. And just as, like I said, as many universities as there are out there, there are recommendations. And I think it's really important to follow Minnesota Department of Ag guidelines when cleaning your eggs, when you are putting them up for sale. And we'll talk more about that on Thursday, but you can also find that information at the Minnesota Department of Ag website. So another thing that you may want to do, and if you are going to sell your eggs, is do egg candling. You want to ensure the interior quality of the eggs in terms of blood spots and cracks. And you want it for a fresh AA quality egg, you want 1/8 inch of air cell or less. For an A quality, 3/16 or less. So how you can buy a fancy egg candler. You want to have it in, keep it in a dark area. I have something here that's not quite so fancy, but it does work. And that is a paper towel roll and a flashlight. Sorry. And then you need a darkened room, and you hold your egg up like this with the wide end at the top, and you will be able to see the air cell. Can't quite see it today because it's not dark enough in this room. The other thing that you can use is your cell phone. Just turn your flashlight on and use that paper toweling and tube, and then also just hold your egg up. Now, brown eggs are going to be harder to candle because of the color of the egg. So just beware of that. Okay. You can also find more information about egg candling at the USDA.gov. There's a whole publication on it. If you are a backyard producer, but you may find this really interesting. If you are in an FFA or 4-H poultry egg judging contest, I would read this publication from front to back, just so that you understand when you're in that contest how to handle the eggs for quality. Eggs that have blood spots will show up relatively easy in a white egg, and those should be discarded. Also, an egg with a crack should be discarded. Just because when in doubt, throw it out. Bacteria can enter into those eggs that have been cracked. Another important feature of eggs and putting eggs for sale, but also for your own home use, is egg grading. It involves sorting the eggs based on quality, size, and weight standards. If any of you like to bake and you're using a medium eggs and it calls for a cup of eggs, it's going to take 6 medium eggs to make 1 cup of egg liquid, or 5 large eggs to make 1 cup of egg product. And this is why, like in some European countries too, you'll find, and on some of these fancy cooking shows, that they weigh their eggs. And we'll look at the weight of eggs in a little bit too. But that's why they weigh their eggs and their ingredients to get the best product. So the quality is based on the shell quality, the air cell, the white, and the yolk. So for example, a grade AA egg has clean, unbroken, unstained shell. The air cell is an 1/8 inch or less, and the white is clear and firm and has the outline of the yolk, and is only slightly defined, and is free from defects such as blood spots. Grading also involves sorting eggs into a weight class or sizes to include peewee, small, medium, large, extra large, and jumbo. Now, as a backyard chicken keeper and a small flock keeper, you may experience all these sizes of eggs depending on where the chickens are in their production schedule. Typically, when a chicken first starts laying eggs, you're going to get small or medium size eggs. And then as they mature and get settled into their egg laying routine, you're going to find a medium or large size egg. And as they age, that get to 2 to 3 years, you're going to get an extra large or jumbo. Also, it also depends on the breed of chicken that you choose for your laying flock. Bantam chickens will lay peewee, small, or medium size eggs. So if we grade our eggs and sort them into weight classes, a dozen large eggs will weigh 24 ounces. A dozen medium-sized eggs will weigh 21 ounces. And today, you're going to see this backwards in your screen, but I'm going to show you my antique egg scale. Make sure I got the right. And these are kind of nice to have at home, especially if you bake a lot and you're making a fancy angel food cake. You want the right amount of eggs in there to incorporate with the right amount of flour. So this egg comes from my Americana. And if you can see that in there, that is a medium-sized egg. So it's going to take a dozen medium-sized eggs are going to weigh 21 ounces. Our white egg here is going to be our large egg. And it's going to look here, large eggs, and they can range from 2 ounces to 2 1/4 ounces for the large egg. I have 21 laying hens. I get between 18 and 21 eggs a day. And I do have a range of sizes with those chickens. And even my leghorns, I get some medium and some large eggs. So now here's the brown egg, and you can see that that is an extra large. So a dozen extra large eggs is gonna weigh 27 ounces. So imagine if you're making that fancy angel food cake, you're talking about 6 ounces of liquid difference between using a dozen medium eggs and a dozen extra large eggs. Now, if you're making an egg bake or something like that, it probably doesn't matter. These egg scales, they still can be purchased at farm stores as well as egg handlers. Springtime is usually when they're in stock, but just ask at your local farm store, or you can look at antique stores. So this particular model of antique egg scale will cost you between $65 and $80 right now if you were going to purchase this at an antique store. The newer models in farm store, probably $25 to $30. So when you store eggs, you want to put them in a carton. You want to put the flat or the fat end up. They'll store better and keep longer. I wanted to give you an example of here's a stained egg, and I collect my eggs in an egg basket, but I think my boys pick these up in an egg basket. It's a wire basket, and if there happens to be any moisture, it'll drain through. But this one, I think they collected in an ice cream pail, and there must have been some moisture on it. So now I've got a nice egg stain here. So I will throw this egg out and discard it. So putting the large end up is the best way to store these eggs, and storing them in a clean carton. In some states, you can reuse egg cartons. In Minnesota, they recommend that you do not reuse egg cartons. You want to make sure that your carton is clean, and you can also purchase egg cartons at your farm stores. You can order them online. So you want to store your eggs in a clean refrigerator at a temperature of 40 degrees or below. Avoid storing eggs with foods that have strong odors like onions or citrus. And those fancy little egg handlers that are on the side door of your refrigerator, we do not recommend using those because of inconsistent temperatures. When you open that, typically those egg holders are on the door, and so when your teenagers are staring into the refrigerator to see what kind of leftovers are there, the temperature can drop pretty rapidly with the products that you have stored in that door. So plus there's not a lot of protection, and with those egg holders in your refrigerator, and you can also pick up these foul odors from the refrigerator. So we recommend storing eggs in a carton in your refrigerator. You want to use your eggs within 4 weeks for best quality, and hard-boiled eggs will keep for up to 1 week in the refrigerator in the shell. When you get an abundance of eggs, or just for fun, you can freeze eggs. They can be stored 9 to 12 months in a frozen state. And to prevent graininess of the yolks, add 1.5 tablespoons of sugar, or 1.5 tablespoons of corn syrup, or a half teaspoon of salt per whole egg, depending on the intended use. If it's going to be a sweet or savory recipe. And you can also store the egg whites separately, and they'll still beat up fine if you want to do if you're going to do an egg yolk or egg white omelet, or you can also use those to make your angel food cake. So 5 large eggs equals approximately 1 cup. And another method is Freezing is a whole egg mixture is to use ice cube trays. So you measure 3 tablespoons of egg mixture into each compartment of an ice tray. You freeze that until it's solid. And then 3 tablespoons of egg mixture equals 1 large egg, or 2 ounces is what you're looking. A large egg weighs 2 ounces. Okay. More information on freezing eggs can be found at the National Center for Home Preservation at the University of Georgia. Eggs are one of the most complete foods. You can see that it has 0 carbohydrates. So those of you who are on these high protein diets, eggs are a good supplement. Also for children, for growth, protein is really important. And also for our elderly population, to make sure, you know, when you get older, your appetite decreases. So you want to make sure that people are getting the right amount of protein and amino acids for complete body function. And eggs are one of the most complete nutritional foods that there are. One thing I found is that egg consumption has gone up about 15 eggs per person in the last five to 6 years. So in 2019, the average American was eating 287 eggs per year. And I think that's why we've seen that, well, this trend too of growing our own food, raising our own backyard chickens, purchasing eggs from small flocks. Also, there's many great ways to enjoy eggs. So in the chat box, I invite you to put your favorite way to make eggs. And what I've included here is a list of ways. My husband, you know, I have 4 dozen eggs right now in my house. So here's a couple things that I'm going to be doing. So this morning, the boys, before they went out to school, they got a hot breakfast with scrambled eggs in an egg burrito. And we enjoy poached eggs and fried eggs. Custards require 8 to 12 eggs per pan, and also making a bread pudding, which contains that custard, which is milk, sugar, and eggs. Angel food cakes can use up to 12 eggs per angel food cake. Lemon or lime curd, you add lemon, eggs, and sugar to make a lemon pie, or to make this lime curd, which goes well in the next item, which is popovers and cream puffs. That is just basically flour, eggs, and a little bit of milk for a popover or a cream puff. And hard-boiled eggs. If you find that eggs are getting a little bit older, if they're in that 3 to 4 week range, that is the time to make your hard-boiled eggs. They'll come out of the shell a little bit easier. And you can also pickle eggs, same way, you know, it's just a vinegar, water, and maybe some sugar and some spices. And that makes a nice addition to your salad. Let's see, and one trick I have for you today too, you know, I grew up with egg salad sandwiches, and we ate a lot of those, and chopping and dicing those eggs. And sometimes you get that one mixed with the mayonnaise, it just flops onto the plate. So I learned a little trick. You use your box grater for consistent cutting, chopping of an egg, and you mix that with your mayonnaise and a little bit of spices for your egg salad. So try that the next time, is use a box grater to make your egg salad sandwiches with. And then there's egg bake and so many more ways to use up your eggs. And egg bake's another great way to use those frozen eggs. A lot of people will freeze eggs when the price goes down in the store, and save them up for their holiday baking when eggs can, when the egg prices increase, or during the winter months when chickens don't lay as many, or that they're in their mold. So you can find more sweet and savory recipes at incredibleegg.org. And there are many other websites too that will have great egg recipes. So important part of being an egg chicken keeper is consuming the products that we raise. So thank you. You can connect with the University of Minnesota Poultry at extension.umn.edu. Poultry small scale or on our facebook.com page. And we hope you enjoy raising and producing eggs. We hope we've given you a little bit of insight on how to keep your eggs clean and use them in your home. Abby or Wayne, what kind of questions do we have?
And we've also been fortunate in that Jennifer Steffs has joined us from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And she is in inspections and works in the egg section. So she's been helping out a lot with a lot of our questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Glad to have you with us.
Glad to be here.
So help out in here wherever, and we'll also, as we go through this, let's go back to, I guess, we made a list of questions in the beginning, but also they continue to come in here, but we should go back to the list we started with in the beginning. Let me see what we have. So will the slides be shared? Yes, they will be shared. Abby answered that. How much ventilation should a coop have? The percent of humidity that is safe in a coop. Do you want to tackle that? And I'll add some comments too, Colleen. That's a complicated one.
Yeah, and it depends. You know, and it depends what time of the year is. But here's the question, or that really the answer to the ventilation. If you can smell ammonia in your chicken coop, first thing is to clean, and the second thing is to provide some kind of a ventilation, especially in the winter months. So we're looking at 65% humidity. Wayne, is that what we looked at when we were doing our other webinar?
Yeah, I believe so. In that ballpark. I mean, one of the key factors is, as we move into winter months, is that you don't want, for example, condensation on the walls. If you see condensation on the walls or floor, you've got way too much humidity in there, and that's really bad for the birds. So even with or without the smell of ammonia, if you have condensation, you need to have more ventilation, and probably if you have birds, for example, getting frostbitten, it's too cool in there. You need to add some heat to it. Heat will help. Heat will actually help the air hold more moisture, but at the same time, it will also help you get the moisture out of there. If it's too cool and it's condensing on the walls or floor, then you have a more difficult time of getting the moisture out of the building. So you've got to have the building warm enough to move air out.
Yep. So the other thing too, one of the recommendations is to keep your water outside as long as you can until it starts freezing. And then also, if you do have spills, now I raise my water up. You can put a screen so that when the water, if they spill water, it goes down into, I've got it like an oil pan with a screen over the top, and if spill water, it goes into that pan instead of on the floor and into all the bedding. And I especially find that true, like with the ducks, because they're messy. But chickens, keep that water area clean and neat and tidy, because that does add to the amount of moisture in the chicken coop as well.
Yeah.
Okay, what else do we have, Wayne?
What is considered a stain on an egg? And Jennifer touched on this a bit in the Q&A in the chat.
And what does Jennifer say?
I did see that Wayne had put a link to the USDA grading manual in here, and that's actually pretty helpful for detailing some of the particulars with egg quality, whether it's exterior or interior quality. And staining is it is hard to quantify, but it's something that is typically not patterned, but not something that you can scratch off. With the cleaning methods that Colleen earlier referenced. And so typically they do reference specific sizes for staining. So approximately 1/32 of the surface if those stains are so localized, or 1/16 if they are scattered. So if they fall into moderate staining or more significant staining, then that would be considered a dirty egg and should be discarded. It's more apt to contribute to bacteria or growth on the interior, which is why that kind of falls into that. Plus, if you are selling eggs, it's not desirable to see that on an egg if you are in a position of selling your eggs.
So Jennifer, I think realistically, people are not going to try to measure the surface area of the egg to know if it's 1/16 or 1/32. Could you just say in general that if an egg has a stain on it, don't sell it?
I mean, I would say that's a pretty safe measurement. And I've had folks say, well, can I just use that for my own use? And I mean, I think again, it's somewhat of a personal preference to that, but it can be an indicator of bacteria. That's a part of it. But so if you are obviously cooking your eggs very well, you would potentially kill any bacteria, salmonella namely, that is actually very easily killed with heat. But we don't always know that with our market of who we sell eggs to, how they're going to be prepared.
And egg staining
go ahead, Colleen. Go ahead.
Egg staining looks like a tea stain on a tablecloth. It's very light, and the other thing is what do you think that stain was caused by? Like I said, the boys picked up the eggs in an ice cream pail that had feed in it. There was a little bit of water on there. We got stains. If it comes from manure, remember that egg is breathable, and bacteria can transfer from the outside of the egg to the inside of the egg. So I'll just wrap it up by saying, when in doubt, throw it out.
Yeah.
Okay, Wayne.
Has to be safe. Is candling necessary for home use? Can you use a cracked egg for home use, especially if it is collected that morning? So 2 questions there.
Typically, I do not candle or grade my eggs. It's just kind of interesting to know for my own personal use. Now, if I am gonna make an angel food cake, though, I want to make sure that I have the right ratio of moisture, which is provided by the eggs, to the right amount of flour. Otherwise, my product, my angel food cake, my egg whites aren't gonna whip up and stay aerated. They're gonna be too soggy, and I'm gonna end up with a flat angel food cake. Now, if you're just making fried eggs, scrambled eggs, or poached eggs, it doesn't really matter for home use. But it's recommended that if you are going to sell eggs and you need to have a label on your eggs, and you say that your eggs are large eggs, the eggs in that package have to be large or extra large. They can't be smaller. And that's the technicality. So you really, if you're selling large eggs, you cannot have a medium egg in there. And then the cracked eggs, I throw them out. Now, if I crack an egg in the house with my thumb or something, but if it comes from the chicken coop cracked, I just don't know what kind of bacteria or what caused that crack. I throw it out. It's not worth it to me. So cracked eggs, I recommend throwing those out.
Yeah, it's really not worth taking the chance of getting sick over eating one egg. it's no fun to spend time in the loo getting rid of that bad egg. So somebody asked about sourcing heritage breeds. Where can you get them?
Let's see.
So there are a variety of hatcheries around, and even the big ones handle heritage breeds to some extent. So in Iowa, the big hatcheries are
Hoover Hatchery,
which
Murray
one?
McMurray,
Yeah, McMurray.
Hoover Hatchery. Now,
Hoover.
yep. And some of these hatcheries do source their heritage breeds from private breeders. So the Minnesota Poultry Association, I believe that's the one that has a list of breeders that would have some heritage breeds as well. We can include that website. And there are poultry shows that happen across the state of Minnesota. There's some in New Ulm, and the state show is usually held in Hutchinson each year. And then there is the Minnesota Association of Poultry Breeders is also a good source for some of those heritage breeds.
Yeah, we can look online, but anyway, if you just type in heritage breeds and sources of heritage breeds, a lot of the hatcheries, or type in hatcheries, and they should appear and give you a lot of options in the Midwest, places to get birds, depending on the particular breed, of course, that you're wanting.
Mm-hmm. And I would suggest too, if you're looking for a heritage breed, to seek out those breeders right now, because they are planning their egg production and for the next spring. And some heritage breeds too won't lay eggs in the middle of winter, no matter what kind of environment you put them in, that they will hatch later in the year. And you may also want to consider fall chickens, getting them as baby chickens in the fall and then bringing them around into the spring. That'll be that 18 weeks. And then they'll start laying in the spring again when the day length is longer.
That's a really good point, Colleen, because if you get birds in the spring, about the time they're ready to start laying in the fall, sunlight goes down and their production may go down. So right off the bat, they're producing less eggs than they could. Whereas if you get them in the fall, by spring, they're ready to lay eggs, and the long days will give them lots of energy to produce a lot of eggs. It's really true. So what about reusing egg cartons? Jennifer had touched on this a bit, but maybe you want to address that again, Jennifer? Reusing egg cartons? Or Colleen, go ahead.
Yep. Here again too, it depends. If it's for your own home personal use, where your egg cartons have been. If you crack eggs and put the shells back in the egg carton, you have cross-contamination already. So therefore, I would not recommend reusing egg cartons. If you're going to sell eggs, I would certainly, and it adds an expense because they're about 50 cents, per carton. If you purchase them, you'll have, buy in quantities. But if you're selling that amount of eggs, I would suggest that you buy in quantity as well, the egg cartons, and then just put them in a fresh egg carton every time when you're going to sell them or donate them.
Sorry, Wayne, I couldn't get off mute and Colleen soon enough, but this is Jennifer Steffes, and I do agree. I think sometimes if you are selling eggs, you want to look at, kind of presenting the most professional look that you can to your eggs, and a fresh new carton can certainly accomplish that. But truthfully, there is no law in Minnesota preventing you from reuse of cartons if you are in the business of selling them. We just do say that you would want them to be in a clean and sanitary condition. That's what the Minnesota rules say. and that all of the information on that carton needs to pertain to the eggs you're selling. So if it says large and you're selling mediums, then that wouldn't apply. So you either have to cover or black out information that does not apply to your eggs. If you're using something that says certified organic and your eggs are not certified organic, again, you know, and the dating, all those sorts of things. And so sometimes that gets to be a lot of crossing out, covering up, and probably more hassle than it's worth for your time. So those are things to consider.
Good
So
points.
Go ahead, Colleen.
No, I was just gonna say good points, Jennifer. Yep.
So something that popped in my mind is in a grocery store, if you see a carton that has one or more cracked eggs in it, what does the store do with that? Does it just go in the garbage?
Jennifer, I'm not aware of any laws, but I would think that not only that carton, but other eggs, because if the white has leaked or oozed, it's contaminated other eggs as well. So that's why, you know, typically if I purchase eggs in the store, I do check. And then also some smaller retailers will also double check the eggs because they don't want to sell eggs that are cracked or broken. And certainly if you bring home an egg or a carton of eggs from the store and you find that one is cracked or broken, either take the eggs back, or I would suggest not using them because you have no idea how long that egg was cracked, and what other contaminants, or where it was stored, that there could be some cross contamination.
This is Jennifer, and yes, Colleen, you are spot on with that. Technically, leakers, so once that yolk has actually left the shell through that crack, or even simply cracked eggs, they fall into different categories, which can downgrade those eggs. And everything offered to the consumer at a retail level must meet grade B or better. And so just in the packing and the handling and storage, sometimes things are a hairline crack and not necessarily as visible when they're fresh eggs, but as they age and as they chill, that crack becomes more visible and sometimes ends up as a leaker. And most oftentimes that's how that's handled. And so at a retail level, when people are shuffling through these cartons, a lot of times that happens. And the retailers really should be having somebody checking at the cash register or periodically going and restocking and rechecking those eggs to pull those ones with cracked eggs from the counter or case.
Interesting. Okay. Another question. Have you ever water glassed eggs as a preservation method?
No.
So what does that mean? That's a new term to me. Water glassed eggs.
I'm not sure.
Hey,
I saw
Wayne,
I saw something about it recently in a chat, but only a bit, and then I forgot about it. So
hey, Wayne, it's Askia. That was my question. And I just was wondering, it's preserving them in water with lime. And I've seen a number of people who've been able to put their eggs in there with a certain ratio with lime and be able to keep the eggs for over a year at room temperature, just in that solution.
no, I don't know anything about it.
I would suggest contacting the Canning and Preserving Institute at University of Georgia. The other thing too, that lime is acid, much like if you were going to make a pickled egg or something like that, but it sounds like you're trying to, that they store them right in the shell.
Yep, it's an unwashed egg that just gets put straight from the coop
Yeah.
into the solution and stirred at room temperature.
Yeah. I am unfamiliar with that process. So
It's very popular with homesteaders.
Huh.
I'll have to look into it.
Yeah, interesting. A new one today.
Thanks
So
for your good
allergies,
question.
allergies, do they ever go away, and why are some people allergic to eggs? I don't know how common it is to be allergic to eggs. Much more.
People who are allergic to eggs, it makes it very difficult because eggs are found in a lot of things, and eggs are found in a lot of vaccines. Or some products from eggs are used as carriers for vaccines. That question is beyond the scope of my.
Mine too.
It is one of the big 8 allergens, so it's common enough and drastic enough for reactions to be one of the big 8.
Huh. So does it ever go away? Does it gradually reduce over time, or does it get worse for people?
I know.
That I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The person I know that has egg allergies is in probably his 70s now. So.
Whoever asked that question, if you would send us an email, we will try to pursue that and get an answer for you. Also, the one regarding the glassing eggs. Askia, we'll get back to you on that. But on the allergies, that's an I don't know. So here we go. This is along the line of refrigeration. How long can eggs sit outside at 60 degrees? 60.
They should be brought in as soon as possible and packaged, and recommendation is within 24 hours. And what was my one fact on there that I have to look, every 24 hours that they're kept at 75 degrees, they lose 1 egg grade and they lose their quality.
Yeah.
So
better to refrigerate them as ASAP.
right. Yep.
That's
it. Yep. Okay.
A duck question. Will there ever be a webinar on ducks?
We will take that under advisement. And
yep.
Yes, I have raised ducks. I've raised duck eggs. And we may do a panel on the ducks just to add some more expertise for what we have in Minnesota. And I'm interested in knowing what you want to know about ducks. Is it raising eggs? Is it ducks for meat production? If you can put that in the chat box, certainly stay tuned, and that will be an option, I believe.
Can you use a stained egg to feed back to the chickens?
I do not recommend feeding eggs, whole eggs, back to chickens because they will start to eat all the eggs.
Yeah.
That's been my experience, is that it's hard to break a chicken from eating eggs. And I put that little mustard trick in there, but it is really difficult to get a chicken to stop eating eggs. So I do not feed whole eggs. Now I've heard of people, like some people will scramble up their eggs for their pets, for their cats and their dogs. One thing I have heard of is you wash your eggshells out and you dry them completely. You mix them in a spice grinder or a coffee grinder, and you can spread them on your vegetable garden. Especially about tomatoes.
Actually, that's the next question is, what about giving cracked up eggshells back to your birds?
And people have done that.
Well, is it the kind of thing that you would want to wash them well before you did? Because if there's any egg residue on the shell, it may make them want to eat more eggs.
I would just say oyster shell is inexpensive.
Yeah.
It's a great way to supplement calcium needs, and a lot of times too, these feed products do have enough calcium involved as well. I would say it's not necessary, and put your eggshells in the compost pile, or dry them and use them for your vegetable garden.
It's not worth the risk of having a whole
Right.
group of hens go bad eating eggs. So what about, let's see. Well, once again, I've heard farm fresh eggs can be kept unrefrigerated for up to a month at room temp. Is that really okay if you were just keeping them for yourself?
Jennifer, you want to help?
I was wondering if you were going to throw that one at me. Truthfully, there are, areas, Europe, etc., that's a common theme. I would absolutely say not to go that route, because if there is any sort of bacteria or potential, in your flock, Salmonella enteritidis is one that is basically comes from the interior of that bird, and they can shed it into the egg. Refrigeration is designed to prevent growth of pathogens and bacteria, namely Salmonella. And so keeping them at 45 degrees or less is the target. That will do a couple of things. It will add to the shelf life of your egg, and it will also prevent growth of bacteria.
And I think the other thing is if you're going to keep eggs, you probably keep them in your kitchen, which has fluctuating temperatures. And especially this time of year when you're going to turn the oven on and you're going to make a pot roast and you cook chicken, your kitchen can get to 80 degrees. And if that happens, it's going to take it for a couple of hours. And your eggs that are out in the open are degrading at that point, losing egg quality.
Yep.
So I'm not a fan. People in Europe do leave their eggs out, but they've been vaccinated for Salmonella, which adds to the cost of the eggs and the price of the eggs in Europe. Thanks, Jennifer.
All right, so here is a consumption. Any tips on how to get my 9-year-old son to try eggs? He says he hates them, but won't try them.
I think, well, what other foods does he like? So maybe he would like an egg pancake. Take 3 eggs, add 2 tablespoons of flour, add a little cottage cheese maybe, and make him a pancake. You can do crepes, are another great way to use eggs and get him to eat eggs and the higher protein. One of the recipes I saw the other day is mixing eggs in with your oatmeal. So if you do a oatmeal with brown sugar or oatmeal with apples and nuts, if he eats those things. So I'd like to know what other foods he does eat and likes, and then mix that in. There are some really great and creative egg sandwiches right now, as well as the egg burritos, the scrambled eggs with egg burritos. I think one of the things that I learned, I have a diabetic son, and to get him to eat the right foods is to make it pretty. Plate it up, put an apple slice with it, put some raisins, make a monster out of it, those kinds of things. Because as finicky as some kids are, getting all the nutrition from an egg is really important. So if you, and you can email me that question and tell me what other things he likes to eat. I have some other ideas for you. Any other suggestions for finicky eaters? I mean, don't make it like an egg.
It seems to me that little kids like cheese in general, whether it's, a chunk of cheese or melted. So make a cheese omelet or put cheese over a fried egg, and that can help it a lot, especially if it's a cheese they like.
Or we're in Minnesota, kids put ketchup on everything.
It's funny because he doesn't like cheese or eggs.
How about
Then you've
tacos?
got
I have
raw-
a child that loves burritos and tacos and things like that. So we've actually even incorporated scrambled eggs into like a breakfast burrito and things like that they wouldn't have normally ate because of all the other goodies in it.
Or try that custard, like, because custard is like a pudding. What was the other? Eggs or cheese or,
So somebody's asking, Barbara is asking us to talk more about the vaccination for salmonella in Europe. She said she's noticed that when in Europe, eggs are not refrigerated.
and that's why. It's because
Yeah.
they're vaccinated. Yep. And the chicken actually gets vaccinated, and it costs $1 or $2 per bird to have it vaccinated.
And that is offered here in the United States too. There's actually more and more of the large operations that are starting to do that. The different vaccination companies are selling some of these products that are modified live or inactivated vaccines that are specific to some of these kind of human illness type pathogens. Salmonella, namely Salmonella enteritidis, is the most common.
So it's interesting that it is still so expensive because vaccinating against coccidiosis or Marek's disease, those are really cheap and worth doing. I'm wondering why the vaccine is still so expensive. $1 to $2 a bird. That's a lot.
Well, and Wayne, I should have probably touched on this too. Using biosecurity practices are, really cuts down your exposure to these foodborne illnesses and salmonella. Washing your hands before and after you collect eggs, washing your hands with soap and water after you've washed your eggs, and cooking eggs to the proper temperature can all cut down this exposure.
And by the way, Abby has made a couple of really good videos about biosecurity that are on the poultry YouTube channel. So if you want to learn more about biosecurity, even in a backyard setting, it's more important than we really appreciate often.
Yep. Wayne, we want to be respectful of everyone's time. It is a little bit after 1. There's some more important questions there that we can answer quickly.
I think we've covered. We've gone through all of them as far as I can tell.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you've gotten a majority of your questions answered, and we've created more questions. Stay tuned as we bring you more poultry webinars. We'll work on that duck one too. I want to thank Jennifer Steffes for being with us today and providing some industry expertise as well from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture. Abby Schaft, who was our technical expert today. Wayne Martin for monitoring the chat box. Thank you, the University of Minnesota Extension, where we're driven to discover, making a difference in Minnesota environment, food and agriculture, communities, families, and youth. Have a great day.